And that word workable, in a sense, I think takes the judgment out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Because it is not asking the question, is it workable? Whatever I'm doing, saying, writing, speaking, is it workable for this moment? Is it workable for the people here? So workability question, asking myself the workability question takes out whether I'm being good, whether I'm being right, whether I'm being perfect. All of those, good, bad decisions or judgments are taken out. It's just, is it workable? If it is not, find another way.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining the webinar today. We're going to be talking about one of my very, very favorite topics, which is reflection. And this is Tracy, by the way. I'm a coach in Vancouver. I'm also working with Coacharya. And sorry, I was just taking a look, got distracted by the chat. And joining me is the lovely Madhulika. Madhulika, I would love it if you can just take a moment to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, of course. So I am Madhulika Tyagi. I am based in Bangalore, India, and I have completed my foundation and advanced program with Coacharya in June. So last year I was a participant as well. I'm in the process of accreditation right now. So yeah, I'm a coach in journey. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks. And we had the pleasure of learning together in the same cohort. And I say that because I learned a lot, especially from your reflective practice, Madhulika. It was really, really beautiful. So I'm just going to introduce the topic again, just in case, because I see that some people are just joining in now. So today we're going to be talking about reflective practice, what that is, what that looks like, how that's going to be more of a component of the Coacharya journey moving forward, and what our expectations are and the EMCC's expectations are in that regard. And I'm seeing that some people are posting in the chat where they are saying hello from, so that's wonderful. Please continue to do that, and we'll get started. Yeah. So what if we start with the very first thing is chatting about what an actual reflection is, because I think that word gets used a lot and it tends to sometimes be a little bit of an umbrella term. But what, Madhulika, I'll ask you, what does reflection mean to you when you think about that?
Yeah, glad you asked that. So reflection, so I would say that it's really, a point of stopping, taking a pause, and really seeing what's happening. Really seeing. So for me, reflection, it means that taking a pause and seeing what's happening, noting it down or recording it in some manner, just so it is there and not a passing thought.
Yeah. So I like that, because I think that also indicates that reflection is something that can happen in the moment, where we think about reflection a lot of the times as something that we do later, which is definitely also a wonderful application. But yeah, and I think when I was thinking about reflection, I was thinking about the metaphor that it brings up, right? Which is the idea of a mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And really how we're sort of taking that pause, whether it's in the moment or whether it's after the moment, and we're looking at an object outside of ourselves that's giving us information about ourselves, and I guess even our situation.
Yeah. An exact, accurate, just as is, that kind of picture. So yeah. So if it's something here, I'll see that in the mirror. That's how the reflection is extremely objective as to what is present.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you were saying if there's something like you think about it, there's times that when we take that moment to look at in the mirror that we realize things that we hadn't realized, like, you know, toothpaste on the face or something like that.
Yeah, of course.
But we yes. We receive information about ourselves that we wouldn't have otherwise noticed, right? Because we're looking at it a little bit more objectively. And I see that Ravi has raised a hand here. And sure. I don't know if I'm a little new at the webinar of the technical stuff, just so we know. So let me see. Well, maybe we'll keep talking and I'll try to figure that out because I don't know if Ravi wants to come on.
So Tracy, if somebody wants to ask a question, how are we taking those, or somebody has something to share on whatever we are discussing, how are we going to take that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So why don't we have questions come through the Q&A, because that'll be easier for you and I to keep our eye on. So yes, please do that. If you have any questions or you have any comments, please post those in the Q&A. And then that way we're able to see those and address those. And then as things are maybe coming up for you, you're feeling inspired and you want to chat about it, you can do that in the chat, but we're going to be a little less able to filter through those. Does that sound good? Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. And Tracy, I was thinking it might help all of us on the call, the participants, the current learners also, if I could share a little from how we were doing this, this reflection during or along our journey, and what did I learn from there as a cohort, I mean, as a learner. So a little bit from my own experience of what was good, what wasn't so good, what I could have done differently. So I could share some of that. And you could also let us all know a little bit on EMCC requirements.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even just my own reflective practice. So yeah, why don't we start with that, Madhulika? Please share with everyone how the reflective process worked for you as you were going through the learning journey.
Yeah, so I am actually asking and inviting everyone here who's a current learner or even a coach in practice. I am saying that as things are happening and as the program is going on, as the classes are happening, it's a very useful practice of actually taking a pause while we are participating as learners in the classroom, in the sessions. But what I'm requesting here is that really take the pause after the sessions. Take the pause to see what's happening inside of you. What has moved after the session, during the session sharing, the reflections or the assignments that are given, they're connected to what was done in the session. So really taking a pause to do that. I did not do that, and therefore I'm suggesting that others do that, because it became a bulk of a chunk of work for me towards the end. It piled up. So I had to spend a lot of extra time, and I wish that I had done that along the way, and I'd taken these small pauses very regularly. That said, even though I was not doing so many given reflections, I had been in a practice of writing things or scribbling things on my own during the session. So during the class sessions, as well as things which just come up throughout the day. So I was in a mode of reflection all through. So some bit here, there, scattered, but I was doing that. And I would, from the benefit of hindsight, I would say that I wish I had done all of the reflections which were given to us. They were beautifully crafted, and they required us to actually look into not just the content of the session, but how we were engaging with the content. With that engagement, what was happening within us in our journeys as people, as not just as coaches, not just as learners, but as people in our life, what was happening in my family life because of what I'm learning and what I'm imbibing, what I'm observing. absorbing. So yeah, I guess I'm rambling a little bit here, but I'm saying that taking that regular pause makes sense.
Yeah. So in a sense, what I'm hearing is that you were reflecting in the moment and making notes of that and having insights as they came up. You're being reflective.
Yeah.
Lovely. But the actual practice of pausing afterwards and taking some time to sort of organize or deepen those reflections wasn't happening.
Yeah.
What do you think came in your way?
I think I was very unstructured person. I think, and I was also a little bit of a perfectionist, and I guess I am a little bit of perfectionist. And so I used to think, I will get this one day where I'll sit down and I will go deep. I will delve deep. So that's what came in the way, like wanting to be better, nicer, perfect in what I write and what I submit. I think that was coming in the way, blocking it happening then and there. So it accumulated for me at the end.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I can so relate to that. That tends to come up for me as well. It's the perfectionism. So it's the feeling like I need to take a lot of time because I really need to make it perfect. And the very purpose of a reflection isn't perfection, right?
True. So we were digressed, vastly from there. I mean, Tracy and everyone here, what I'm saying is the intention of this reflection is really just to reflect and put it out. Stop, notice, take a pause, see what's happening, and just put it out. That's the only intention. The intention was not to submit a perfect write-up. Intention was never that. And somehow I was running after that intent of writing it perfectly. And therefore it accumulated for the perfect day when I'll sit down and write.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought in intention, because I think that's a big factor here. Like the intention of a reflection, even when we're assigning them at a Coacharya, is not for us to see how you're writing or even necessarily to see that you've gotten things right, and I think that that's the stumbling block. That's always been the stumbling block for me. I feel like I need to prove something. and so then I take a lot of time trying to do that. But a reflection is really about, how am I taking the information that I'm learning and integrating it into my day-to-day life? What's happening when that happens? And then how am I learning from that?
Yeah.
Right.
Truly.
Yeah.
It's really about noticing the change which is happening with the cohort members, with the sessions, with the practice that you are engaging in as a coach. So what's happening inside of me? Just being observant to that change or transformation or the movement that's happening in us as people, as coaches. So when I actually carved out time to write some of these reflections, I found that they required me to they required me to look at myself as a person and as a coach. They required me to look at what was happening inside of me, what was happening in my life, so I could relate various aspects of my life and bring them all together in my reflections. That was all was required, like how I'm changing as a person and as a coach along this journey. That is all what was required. It didn't ask me ever. None of your reflections asked me to give a perfect write-up or give 10 on 10 write-up, perfect English or no typos or grammatically correct. None of those were requirements.
Yeah. And I thought you said something really important, and that's that it's looking at parts of your life as well. So when we think about this reflection and this mirror, we're not like just zooming in on one particular thing, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking at the entire context of what's showing up for us, like how is that impacting us? How is that impacting others around us? How is it shifting our coaching practice? So it's really like a larger view. And also what's coming up for me is it's a larger view of how some of the learnings are impacting those things, but also how some of the larger contexts are impacting our learnings as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one more interesting thing which is just now coming up for me is that my reflection, sometimes I am so driven by my context, like the context which or my limiting belief or everything that I had in my past that drives me to it drives my being. So if I'm not writing in a reflection is because I think, oh, I'm I am not a structured person, so I need this time. So I have certain beliefs about myself, and those beliefs are driving me to even write the reflection. So I am thinking if as a learner, if the role of a learner is to learn and to reflect how the learning is happening, how the learning is impacting me as a person, as a coach, if that's the role, then why am I getting so fussy around everything else about the quality, the kind of product that I will put out in my reflection, the kind of writing, how perfect it will be, or what are my limitations? So why can't I just be objectively doing what is asked? The ask is to reflect, to see, and to put it out. That's all. That's all the task is.
Yeah. And, you've brought up a word a few times now, and that's objective. And I think that that's a valuable thing to explore, because one of the things that we're going to be looking for more in our reflections, and I know that EMCC, when their reflective portfolio comes through, wants to see more evidence of critical thinking. And I cringe at using that word because I find that critical thinking, it's powerful, but it brings up the idea of something almost negative, right? Like something critical.
Critic.
Yeah. Critic. But when we think about it in terms of objectivity, right? Objective thinking, it's like trying to look at something and removing our very personal lens that we tend to look through it, the filter of the people that we think we are, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you brought up something that really I thought was so powerful when we were you were reflecting, and we'll talk about that through WhatsApp. And you talked about how you can sometimes find that objectivity by doing something. And I just want to let you run with it, because it was really beautiful.
Yeah. So I found, and this was over a period of time, and it took a little work and practice, but it is possible. So it was possible for me to become objective, to step out of myself, step out and away from who I think I am, what are my limitations and my perception of myself. So it became possible. So what helped me was to really step into the role that I have at a certain point. If I have a role of a learner, what is the intention of being a learner? If I have a role of a coach, what intention am I serving? Am I in the service of that intention? If I have a role of a parent, am I serving the intention? So when I look at myself, am I serving the intention of this role, this task, this work, this accountability that I have? It becomes so much easier to, step out of myself, because then I am not limited by my limiting beliefs. I do not have to be nicer, better, or improve. I can be objective about it. Okay, this is the role. Did I do what is required of a role of a coach? Did I do what is required of a role of a parent, of a person here in this conversation? Did I do what was required of a person, say, in a participant in this webinar? Am I delivering on that intention? And if not, what could I do differently the next time? Not necessarily better. So these terms I find, Tracy, the improvement, the betterment, these somehow are so judgmental that they automatically tell you, okay, if you better, which means you were not. You want to improve, which means you are not. So you are judging yourself constantly. And when we are judging ourselves, we are judging everyone else also. So yeah, so it helps to step out, become objective when I am just serving the intention of a particular role or just serving the intention of a task at hand, whatever the task could be.
Yeah, so I think that when you think about we learn what a coaching mindset is, right? what we talk a lot through our training about, like, what is a coach? How does a coach exist? They're holding space for unconditional positive regard and client centricity and generative visioning and all of these things, and not providing solutions. So these are all concepts that we sit with, and we really, really spend a lot of time talking about them and thinking about them and trying to practice them. But the objectivity is looking at that practice and saying, not how did I do me as a person, but it's absolutely. Like, how was that being of the coach evidenced within that session? And if it wasn't, what came in the way? And what can I do differently next time? Yeah.
Not better necessarily, but what can I do which is new, which is different?
Yeah.
That's it. Different.
And it opens different, and different opens up so much more, because have you ever noticed sometimes when we're trying to do better at something, we continue doing the same thing, trying to get better? It's like that definition of insanity, right? But as soon as we introduce the word different, then not only is the judgment not there, but there's also a possibility opened up, because we're no longer following the path that didn't turn out to be land where we necessarily wanted to land.
So we're not chasing something which is out there, and you're not chasing that, you're choosing a different way, a different thing, a different goal or different way of working. So just different.
Yeah. And so in a way, it's like the purpose of a reflection is to not be there sitting in judgment of ourselves. And it's also not being there sitting to prove something, and that's the different perspective that we're going to have on the EMCC reflective portfolio, as opposed to, I think, in the past, where we looked at, okay, evidence all of these capability indicators that are here. It's rather really take the theory that you're learning in session, practice it, reflect on what happened in that practice, and then see what needs to shift in your application of the theory. Or maybe there's another type of theory that you would bring in, or maybe there's a different sort of preparation that you would take, or a different tool that you would use in the session, and then reflect on that again. So it's really like a journey of deepening awareness in a way.
Yeah. Tracy, one more thing, now it's just occurring how some of the reflections that I used to write, I actually used to write in third person. So I used to write for the, competencies evidenced or not evidenced. When I was writing about what went well, sometimes I remember some of these I have written, the coach did not, or the coach couldn't, or coach can do this. So I really did not write I sometimes. So it became like, okay, somebody is doing that. Somebody who's been given the name of Madhulika Tyagi, who has this persona, this whatever limitations, somebody is doing that. So it was possible, and it became possible with a little practice, little work of stepping out of myself, my limitations, my perception of myself, and looking at whatever I'm doing, either in the session, in the coaching sessions where I'm with clients, or even, writing a reflection, like what did this person named Madhulika did? and what could she do differently the next time. And so therefore, there was no negative connotation of, okay, she needs to become better. It was really that how can she be different the next time?
Yeah, that's wonderful. I like that idea of the third. Yeah, it does. I mean, it's welcoming that objectivity in a way, by looking at it almost like you're supervising yourself. That's kind of what came up for me. Yeah. And so I think even like, I know that, for example, EMCC asks for the reflections to come in first person, but that's still very much a possibility as you're exploring and as you're kind of unpacking everything. If you did do it third person, or if you reflected in a way that feels intuitive and natural to you, then at least you have that to look back on and kind of put together to submit, right?
Yeah.
Because you even brought up yesterday, and I've done this before, even in voice notes, like you're even in talking out loud. Yeah,
I do that a lot. So whenever things come, I have this is a little trick that I use, Tracy and others. I have saved my WhatsApp number on my phone, and sometimes when I have to there's an intuitive thought, or there is something that I'm with the thought, and there's a moment of reflection, I audio record and send it to myself. Later on, I look at it, and sometimes I write it down and mail it to myself. So I keep doing these things sometimes. I've told my husband to check my email for all my reflections when I die.
Yeah, those are great ideas. And I think sometimes people process, like sometimes it just depends on my state of mind. At times I find that talking it out is really helpful. And then there's other times that I find that the actual act of taking a pen to paper and just kind of like moving my energy in that way helps me reflect. So it's the point is there's different ways of doing it. It's really just the process of taking it out of our heads, out of this sort of ruminating cycle that we can get into, right? Or even introspective cycle.
Yeah.
But having, first of all, the objectivity of the reflection, so sort of taking it outside of ourselves and looking at it objectively, and then capturing that information somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I find myself asking this question. So, okay, so let me see what's happening. And then maybe a voice record note, or just even if I'm not able to write a lot at that moment, I sometimes just write the words which are, standing out for me. And then I am able to come back to revisit it. And whenever I find time, I elaborate or I revisit it. It becomes, it deepens then.
Yeah. Yeah. I just noticed something came into the questions. Can we quote some of the reflections that you might have had and how it was helpful?
Any of the reflections?
Yeah.
So some of the reflections, of course, were on the recordings, some of them. So that were very, obviously they had a structure of ICF competencies showing up. So even those were, for me, I think I was being objective in writing, like coach could do this, or, I have written that, okay, I was stronger on these aspects, stronger on these competencies, not so strong on them. So somehow I've been able to disassociate myself with the any negative connotation that I note about myself. So it doesn't, somehow it doesn't affect me. If I'm writing about it, it doesn't pull me down. Over a period of time, that objectivity had come in. So that happened. Some of the other reflections, I think we did one constellation, reflection on constellation, use of constellation method, in which I looked at my own health and the other aspects of my life, which so we did I did the constellation method. I put one cup as health, and the other aspect is family, the relationships, etc. And so I was able to see after that exercise that the health was far away and turned away in my life, and therefore there was no way that I was looking at it, and there were things which are coming in between. The relationship was too close to me, so I was able to look at that. If I move the relationship cup away, the space clears up, and I'm able to get a clear view of the health cup. So it was. So some of these exercises were which were designed by Tracy and our other trainer Revan. They were so craftily. I mean, they were beautifully created. So I'm just off the hand. I'm just remembering this one, constellation one, in which I was able to just clearly see why the hell why I'm not able to focus on my health at all. Why is it so far away from me? Because there were so many things coming in between. That was helpful. Then the entire journey reflection from the session one, where we were asked, okay, what does universe want, us to be? Why are you here? So these broad questions, the three questions. Looking at that and doing my last assignment on where I have reached, I think I was able to put together that last assignment also very objectively. In terms of how I've moved from the session one, what universe, and it was surprising that I had, I didn't even remember that I had said that I just wanted to know myself. That's why I'm in with this course. And towards the end, I was writing exactly what I have known myself to be at present. So after 40 classes, I'm writing reflection on what have I become, who I now know myself to be.
What's amazing about that is, in a sense, by writing an intention as a part of the reflective process, and that's in a way what I think about as reflecting forward, right? Setting an intention is actually thinking about what we want in the future and reflecting forward on that. And in a sense, you ended up doing that, even though you hadn't looked back to see what that answer was until the end of the journey. And I've had that come up for me as well. I've gone back and looked at old journal entries and things that I've, goals that I've set out for myself, or intentions that I've made, that I've created, some short-term, some long-term, and they end up manifesting in this way that I wasn't even tracking them all along.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's something about writing something down and stating it that allows us to subconsciously align with it.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
That did happen with me. The very fact of writing things down, I have found that expressing in writing itself makes it very objective. It is out there. It stops being an emotional rant. It stops being an emotional churn in the head and heart when we put it on the paper.
It loses a bit of power as well. Like, I know that, when I've written down some of my deep fears or my deep, there's something called Loving What Is, or The Work by Byron Katie. And she has this series of reflections that you can do about some of the issues that you may have, the conflicts that you may have with other people. And I find that concept to be powerful as well, because when you start really looking at, okay, what is it that I have at issue with this person? And then you start looking at it critically, like, is this true? Is this just my perception? Did this happen? What happens when I expand beyond this? It can really take some of the power out of the thoughts that tend to rule our actions, right?
Yeah, true. There are a few questions, I think we could take them.
Yeah, I the last one about self-criticism and reflection, I want to jump on that because I was thinking about in this, because I also reflect, and we also really encourage all coaches to reflect on what happens in session with clients, and not just as a part of the training journey, just in general. It's a deep, enriching, masterful practice to do that. And I noticed for myself that I had a specific client that I was having like a bit of a churn with whenever. And I really was like, okay, what is it? Is it her? Is it this client's energy that I'm picking up on? Is it my own sort of insecurities being activated? And I really had to sit and reflect on it. And what finally came up for me after doing that for some time was that it was impatience. And it was impatience with, what I realized is it didn't really matter if it was the impatience with her or it was the impatience with myself. There was impatience coming up within the session. And so what I needed to do in that moment was to really work on cultivating patience. And the only way that I could do that is really being patient with myself, and so what I found that really powerful, because the rabbit hole we can sometimes go down is, I can't believe it, I'm a terrible coach. Like, why am I being so judgmental? But all of that's a judgment, right? Like, like you said earlier, it's like we can't say we're not going to be judgmental and judge ourselves.
Yeah. True.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's that Carl Rogers, like, and I say this a lot because I love it, but like that curious paradox is, only when I accept myself can I change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I need to know, I need to see myself, who I am being in the moment, to be able to accept myself. Okay, if I am being impatient, then I need to see myself. Okay, I am impatient. When I am able to acknowledge what I'm being, then there's a possibility of dropping that off and bringing something, clearing that up and bringing something new, bringing something different. So it's really actually seeing ourselves and being able to acknowledge whatever concept. So like if you were impatient in a session, or you could sense impatience in the space in that coaching session, it can clear up only once you acknowledge it, that it was there.
Yeah. And by acknowledging it, it gives us an opportunity to accept it and then maybe even cultivate a bit of what we need,
Yeah.
So like, for example, this is something that comes up for me inside of coaching, but probably more outside of it, but the invalidation, right? So if I feel like I've presented an idea and that idea isn't received in the way that I thought it would be, I feel like invalidated, and then I can look at that and think, oh my God, why am I so insecure? Why do other people's approval matter to me? But then I'm continuing to invalidate myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can say, okay, I'm feeling invalidated. What can I do to accept myself in this moment? What can I give to myself to feel accepted? And sometimes that's just like you said, the acknowledgement of feeling invalidated. Sometimes it's actually even sitting with that uncomfortable feeling,
So sometimes I think, Tracy, we are being biased to some of these emotions. So if we are happy to acknowledge it. If we are angry, if we are disappointed, if we are sad, we don't want to acknowledge it somehow. How it's very unfair to these emotions. Some of these we just don't want to acknowledge. And what's the big deal? What have these emotions got wrong? It's our perception of them. So I'm really saying, as you would say that, okay, I'm happy, okay, I'm excited, yeah, I'm upset, I'm impatient. Big deal.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because patience wouldn't exist without impatience. Happiness wouldn't exist without sadness, and it's like, but we want to kind of attach on to those ones where you're like, and absolutely, like, celebrating our successes is important as well. But again, not attaching onto those, because I've found that as well. Like I'll feel like, oh, okay, this is, I've done this. And then if something happens that's different the next time, I feel like I've regressed instead of, actually, this is giving me another opportunity to learn here. What else can I learn? And all of these things are opportunities to learn.
Everything is an opportunity. Everything is a learning. So I have somehow come to believe that, and that is a very helpful belief to have. So I think a lot of things become easier to reflect on, objective to reflect on. So my impatience becomes objective. Something I've not done in the session with a client becomes a point of reflecting objectively. Okay, and I can ask myself, okay, I did not do this time. Let me see how I can do it differently the next time with the next client or with this client in the next session. What can I bring in? And I'm really going back again to emphasize that, am I delivering in the intention? Was my intention in that particular session to be the best coach? Was my intention to be the perfect coach, to look good as a coach in that session, to appear perfect in that session? If my intention was that, then I could be bothered about whether I did look perfect or did not look perfect, or was I a good coach or not. If my intention was to be with the client and to serve the client as a coach, then that's what I need to look at. So being very clear in what your intention is in the moment.
That's beautifully said. Was my intention to serve the client? Because being the best coach is taking away the focus from the client and putting it on this pedestal of who we need to be, and it was my intention to be in service to the client, actually, like just completely objective. It's like, yeah. Madhulika, there's a question here about self-talk. Is self-talk a sort of reflection? Wanted to get your perspective on that.
I would say self-talk is a kind of reflective way of being, reflective strategy. So if I were to say I'm as a person a reflective person, because I do a lot of self-talk. What I put out in writing is a reflection. So I really do not know if I'm making it any clearer for you, but I think a person who would self-talk and ask questions like, okay, what happened to me right now? What was happening around me? Or what did I do? So if you're asking those kind of questions to yourself and, delving or staying with the answers or the questions in your own head. And so the self-talk question and answer happens in your head. So I guess you're a reflective person. And reflection would mean, I think, expressing some of it when you have comprehended something out of it.
Yeah.
When you found answers.
It just came up for me right now. That's actually really self-coaching. So if the self-talk is a form of self-coaching, if there are questions, open-ended, open-hearted, objective questions that we're asking ourselves and allowing the answers to float up, then that's reflection. If it's the voices in our heads that transmit judgment or measurement, then that wouldn't be reflection. That would be self-talk, or self-criticism in a sense.
Yeah. So if I'm going to bring a little small personal example. So if I had a tiff or fight, an argument with my husband, and if I am self-talking in my head, okay, what did he do? So I should have done this. Why did he do that? So all of that is self-talk. I wouldn't say that it is a reflection at all. And if I am asking my question, okay, let me see what happened. Why did I do what I did? What was I not doing at that moment? Who was I being? I would say then I'm being reflective on what happened, rather than just self-talking of he shouldn't have done that, he shouldn't have said that, but he's, he always does that. This is the way he is. This is how I am. So all of that is self-talk. And I would say asking myself the questions, if the inquiry is inwards towards me, I would say that is reflection. I am being reflective on what happened.
Yeah. So it's not rehearsing a conversation that we want to have with someone. It's again, I think that idea of like, we're not trying to prove and we're not trying to criticize. So if we're taking that out and just being that objective space in our head, then it's reflection.
I think I sometimes think that it's like, really dissecting what happened, really dissecting and seeing, okay, what happened? Let me see what happened. So really seeing with a microscope inside of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know one of the reflections that we had crafted for the cohort was the reflection in action. And that's something that it's one of the more difficult aspects of reflection, but really, really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. What came up for you about that one?
Well, that was really, really interesting because it was as things are happening. Mm-hmm. I'm not, it's not happening afterwards. It was as things are happening. So it was even when I was sitting down to write on the computer or do this assignment, I was thinking then. So I was thinking, this is what is happening right now. I am thinking that, I have not done this for such a long time. It is piled up. So all of these things and I actually wrote all of this in my assignment that this is what is coming up for me right now. I am taking these assignments so many days later and it's a pile up. So I'm feeling burdened. I'm feeling heavy already before even I've started writing. So I had taken up this as a subject and I was writing and thinking at the same time.
Yeah. That's amazing. And you know what I'm thinking about is like, that's kind of what we're looking for when we're looking at reflecting on coaching practice as well, because it's like what happened at the time and what feelings and all of those things were coming up on for me at that moment, but also what's happening right now as I'm reflecting on it, right? Because there's going to be new information, there's going to be new insights, there are going to be new emotions that are coming up that are going to release information to us. So it's like that reflecting backward, reflecting in the moment, and then reflecting forward as to like what needs to happen next.
So in that one, I could see, okay, all of my cohort members, they've submitted all of their work and people, they've had a lot of practice hours. And so with all these thoughts, I had attempted writing this, reflection in action. So I have written just this. This is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
It was a very different kind of reflection, Tracy. Thank you for giving us that.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it was, I'm grateful for it because I always have to make sure that I'm one of the most things I'm most grateful for in this journey of like working with Coacharya and being a coach and like doing some of the meditation stuff that I'm doing is I have to walk the walk, right? Like I'm not going to ask people to do the reflections if I'm not doing them myself. And so it's been really powerful for me as well. The reflection and action is something that I try to remember to do in during the day, like taking that pause in the moment when I feel myself reacting, and just taking a moment to like expand my view, look at what the situation is, what perception, like a mini reflection happening right there. How am I perceiving this? Is this perception the only truth here? Yeah. And how is my, they talk about setting an intention is only important or is only effective if we actually pay attention to it, right? Mm-hmm. So like, am I paying attention to, like you said, the intention of who I want to be in this moment or the role that I'm being, Yeah. Yeah.
And when I'm serving in the role, am I serving the intention of the role or whatever is demanded of that role or that accountability or that moment, whatever that demands, am I doing that? And looking at it, then asking the second question, is it workable for this role? Not right, not wrong, no morality. Is it good, bad, ugly? No, I'm asking, is it workable for someone to coach this way as I am doing? If not, how can I be different next time? is it workable for a client to have a coach, work this way? If
and
not,
that word
okay,
workable,
let's find a new way of being the
I
coach.
think takes the judgment out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Because it is not asking the question, is it workable? Whatever I'm doing, saying, writing, speaking, is it workable for this moment? Is it workable for the people here? So workability question, asking myself the workability question takes out whether I'm being good, whether I'm being right, whether I'm being perfect. All of those, good, bad decisions or judgments are taken out. It's just, is it workable? If it is not, find another way. To make it workable.
Yeah.
So there's no morality or there's no right or wrong, better, good attached to it.
Yeah. Just a sense of what could happen that's different than before. Yeah. There was something that I read as well about reflection that I thought was powerful. And I think that this could be, and as we're talking about this, I'm like, a lot of this is actually self-coaching, right? It's
true.
The two are very, very blended, but it's creating a question for yourself that you would normally not ponder. And I thought, wow, like that's really interesting. So our reflection now, of course, what we do in our cohorts is that we give some reflective prompts. But that doesn't mean that that's the only form of reflection. Like we can actually have our own practice where we're coming up with our own questions. So by creating a question for ourselves that we would normally not ponder, we're almost like really accessing an inner coach, right?
Mm. Yeah, true, very true. Absolutely. That's interesting, Tracy.
And the other thing I read that I really enjoyed and I wanted to bring in is place a value on doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not a judgment and that's not a criticism, but it's just that little tiny bit of a challenge, that little kind of question mark, like, is this really actually the only truth? Is there something beyond this? Is there another way I could be looking at this? Yeah.
True. Yeah, expanding that scope of vision. Is this the only truth? That's a great question to ask. Is this the only truth which I am perceiving? And all of us would agree that we know that we have limitations in our perception. So acknowledging that as well, that, okay, my perception is limited. So could there be another possibility? Could there be something beyond this, what is appearing to be true right now?
Yeah, knowing in a sense that we're always going to have a blind spot, right? And so just that alone means that there isn't going to be an absolute truth.
True.
Which opens things up in terms of when we're really attached to something or trying to prove something. It's like that little bit of doubt isn't doubt on ourselves. It's just doubt on it's acknowledging that blind spot. It's acknowledging the fact that there's going to be some information that isn't available to us. So what could that be? Yeah.
Yeah, looking for those answers. Yeah.
So I just want to take a quick look at the chat here because I see that there's lots. I'm seeing.
Okay. Somebody said, I think this is on, I don't know, we talked about being in service of the intention or the role. I think it's a comment related to that if I'm understanding it correctly.
Nice. Yeah, I like this service providers. Yeah. Beautiful. And and the objective of reflection is to improve our effectiveness as a coach and as a person. Like it's in all aspects of our lives. So it's something that has really helped me. Like I've learned to, I used to think that like journaling is kind of capturing the story of your day, you know?
Yeah,
And
that could be a good thing to do, but it's not so interesting. I mean, I wouldn't like it. It's okay. It's a record.
yeah, it's a record. Whereas this is deeper than a record. It's actually like, I find that I'm not saying that every single night I'm writing.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen, but it is a fairly regular practice. And it's particularly necessary, I find, when I'm, especially if I find that there's something keeping me up, then I just get up and I grab my book and I kind of write my way through it. And it's a really powerful way for me to figure out what's sticking for me or what's blocking me, or, you know, why these thoughts are like keeping me awake at night. Yeah.
Tracy, there's a Q&A, there's a comment, and I want to briefly clarify what I meant when I said morality. So morality, when I use the term morality, I really meant that being right or wrong, or being righteous about a thing, a person, or a situation. Because the moment we are right, there is somebody who's wrong. So are we out there to make someone wrong or something wrong? Or just ask a question, is it workable? Is it serving the intention of the moment?
Yeah.
So I that's what I meant by morality. I did not mean that you go and do immoral things or unethical things. That was not meant. It was just meant from this point of view of not getting into the right and wrong, good or bad, or really to drop the judgment.
Yeah. No, and I think that's like when I think about that, morality just implies we want to be showing up a certain way to the values that we hold for ourselves, right? So there can be an analysis of that. Am I embodying this value that I hold dear without a judgment of I failed, or this person has failed me, Yeah. And so that's kind of where that's coming from. We want to be thinking about unconditional positive regard as a 360 view. We're holding ourselves in that, and we're holding others in that, because any realization that we're having doesn't need to lead to a judgment. It just needs to lead to a realization and a different action.
Yeah. I don't know how it will sit if I say that I think we have attached too much of significance to ourselves, the idea of ourselves. And are we okay to reduce that significance?
Yeah. And that's the thing. We basically see everything through this by default, you know what I mean? We see everything through this lens of ego. And that's how we've survived all these years. This is how we've made our way through life. But this is maybe taking that and being able to put it over here, being like, I can see it. And I can see how it's maybe motivated me.
It's there. It's telling me this story, and it could be a story. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think we're coming up to our time here. So let me see. I think we're good with all the questions. And
yes, Venkateshwaran, I would agree to that. Yes. We would learn from reflecting on the experience, perhaps. True.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's a lovely way to end. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, everyone.
Madhulika.
Thank you.
Hanging out with you here. Take care.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, Tracy, and with everyone here. So thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.